society. They're like a pod of dolphins. They're the gatekeepers, the bloodline supporting our oceans. I swam with the whales 10 years ago in Tonga for my 60th birthday. I went to Tonga so I could get in the water and actually be eye to eye with the humpback whales. It was enormous.
Well,
um,
you hear so much about whales and overturning, kayaks and small boats, and people don't normally think about swimming with whales. So that's a little bit unique.
yes, well, it's illegal to be any close to the whales here, and in Hawaii even. I mean, there's a huge fine for showing that you're going to go close to a whale. So in Tonga, it's permissible. That's how they make their living. And you go out in a whale boat, and there are protocols that you have to meet. You can't crowd the whales. You can only be on one side of them at a time. But they are magnificent, and they're gentle. They're very gentle. So
You
the
would never
story,
know that. You would never know that. I think
right?
that's fascinating.
Well,
I think that
it's because with Steven Spielberg and Jaws, he over he frightened everybody, and so he couldn't even get in the water for 9 years after he made that film.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
And then you have Moby Dick, and so that's another one. But he was just the whale was upset because Captain Ahab had killed the baby.
Yes,
Any mother
yes.
would go after someone who hurt their child, but
Well,
they are
now,
gentle.
you also you say that there's a certain way to handle emotional baggage, and I know that no matter how wonderful things are, no matter how well things are going for you, there is just stuff that happens in your life,
Oh yeah.
and you always say to yourself, "Oh, why is it happening to me?" or "What did I do to deserve this?" So, how do you handle emotional baggage?
Well, that's the first. I remember learning that from Tony Robbins. He said the worst question you can ask yourself is why is this happening to me? And he said because your ego will respond by saying because you're stupid or because you're a dummy. So you won't get the answer that's inspiring. And sure, things happen, but I have a lot of tools in my little toolbox. I cut cords, and that's a big thread of the healing throughout my book is to teach people how they can do their own self healing and actually resolve and dissolve the cords that they're projecting from their mind, because it's like a movie camera inside of you, and whatever you see outside of yourself is coming from the inside.
But
So,
isn't that easier said than done, Belinda?
right, I know, I sometimes do it. I had to do it yesterday. I was feeling kind of down in the dumps. There was some things going on that just weren't panning out, and I just said, okay, let's. I had to go take a walk. I had to do some breaths. You just have to get back into your center. I don't like that feeling of being down. So I can feel it, but I don't like to stay there. So that's the difference. I know how I can resolve it and how I can dissolve it, and it's up to me to do that. Go take a walk, go be with nature, take some deep breaths,
Well,
do some.
I think that's important. What you're saying is that it's up to you. And a lot
Yeah,
of people always look to others to solve their problems and to solve their situation. And really, it has to start with you. And
yes,
so that's, I think, a very important lesson for people to learn is that, nobody can make those changes for you. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't get help and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't look for alternative ways and so forth. But you've got to make that first decision. I'm not staying here. And that's one of the things people often say to me, don't you ever get depressed? And I say, yeah, for about 30 seconds,
yeah,
and then I think, well, I don't want to be like this. And then I get out of it. But I mean, sure,
right.
there are things that happen that you say, what? And then I say, well, no, I'm not staying here. But what made you write your book? Find your friggin' joy. I mean,
Oh,
there had to be an impetus
yeah.
to that.
Well, my son killed himself.
Oh, wow.
And
That's,
yeah. And
yeah,
so
that's enough to trigger anything. I
I,
lost a son too, my older son, but he didn't take his own life. He died from something else, but I understand what that's like.
well, it just really punches you. And I knew he had been despondent. He had an overdose of pain medication for 2 failed back surgeries. And he saw me heal my spine, but he wouldn't go to the depths that I went. He couldn't do it. And some people can't. You have to be motivated to want to take an active role. And it's fine wherever you are. If you choose to have surgeries or go the other way, as long as you believe in it, fully, then that's your choice. Nobody can change that. And he had been suffering for a long time, and but yet he'd still graduated from college, and he was going to get a master's degree back in Ohio. And it was just too much for him. He couldn't get his medication back there, and um, it was pretty awful going through that. And then a month later, I lost all my money in a Ponzi scheme.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So I was forced to have to sell whatever I could sell. And I moved in with my daughter and my little grandson and took over his care, which saved me because you know how children are just so full of joy. So
Right?
it was a lifesaver doing that. And then I discovered Reconnective Healing. A friend of mine, because I couldn't even do the cord cutting. I was so deep in grief and so, heavy with what had happened. Just couldn't do anything. But a friend dragged me to see this movie called The Living Matrix. It's a DVD, and it features Dr. Eric Pearl, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and some others. And I watched Dr. Pearl do this reconnective healing on a young boy who had been in a wheelchair for most of his life. And after 3 sessions, he didn't even touch the young boy. He was from Greece. He got up and was playing in the playground and holding a cup
Wow.
for the first time. And I just kind of stood at attention. It was the same kind of feeling I had when I first learned Huna 20 years before. I had always just, done the Huna, but Huna is very self healing. It's about you learning how to do these things for yourself. This is about learning how to pull and stretch and find these frequencies with your client, and then that brings them into balance with themselves, mental,
Well,
emotionally.
I want to make sure that our listeners know how to get a hold of you. So let's
Okay.
tell them. Do you have a website they
Oh,
can go to?
absolutely. Yes, it's www.hunahealing.com, and that's HUNA healing.com. And then that has my telephone.
HunaHealing.com. And it's got your book and everything on it?
Yes, and the CDs of the chanting, because I've had 3 CDs. They're also available there as an MP3 or on iTunes as well. And that takes you through the forgiveness process, one of them. So you go through the cord cutting with all your ancestors and the people that you've been holding on to. And once you start learning how to cut cords, it lightens you up.
Well, I would think so. And I don't think I've ever heard it really framed in a way of cutting cords. I think that's kind of nice. I think it's very descriptive and people can imagine that and see that. So if you want to find out much more about Belinda, what she does, go to her website, Huna Healing, HUNAHEALING.com. You will find her resources there, her CDs, her book, all the things that she is involved in. And if you're interested in working with her, you might even go to Hawaii and swim with the dolphins and find out a whole lot about yourself. So this has been really interesting, Belinda. I could go on with you for a very long time, but I think what you have taught us today and shown us today is really just fantastic. And I think again, it's being able to take your own situation into your own hands and do something about it. That's the key. And then, of course, the willingness to want to do it. So if you want to learn more about Belinda Farrell, go to hunahealing.com. Thanks for being with us, Belinda. It's
Oh,
been a joy.
thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.